In the previous episodes, we explored the remarkable memories of children. They spoke of distant villages they had never visited, recognized families they had never seen, and described the final moments of lives they had never lived. But beyond verbal memories, there lies something even more tangible: birthmarks and death wounds. Why do some children come into this world with strange marks on their skin? Some resemble knife cuts, others look like bullet holes. Even more astonishing, their shapes and positions often match the fatal wounds from a supposed past life. Could these marks truly be imprints of a life once lived? Or are they merely accidents of genetics, random quirks of biology? The American scholar Dr. Ian Stevenson was among the first to notice these extraordinary cases. He began to ask, could the human body itself carry the scars of a former existence? In this episode, we step into new territory. From Myanmar to Sri Lanka, from Turkey to the United States, we will examine a series of astonishing cases where the body seems to whisper stories of another life. This is a question science cannot easily dismiss. It challenges our understanding of life, death, and perhaps even the soul itself. If the soul can leave its marks upon the body, then death is not an end, but only another form of continuation, and it all begins with those mysterious birthmarks. In the vast body of reincarnation research, the most striking cases are not only those in which children recall names, places, and events from a previous life, but also those in which their very bodies bear marks that correspond with the manner of death in that former existence. For instance, in the famous Indian case of Shanti Devi, what shocked observers was not only her vivid past life memories, but also the peculiar sensitivities on parts of her body that aligned with her previous life's experiences. In Myanmar, Turkey, and India, across hundreds of documented cases, researchers recorded birthmarks appearing precisely on the spots where the children claimed they had been shot, stabbed, or burned in a former life. In the American case of James Leininger, the young boy not only described the life of a World War II pilot, but his sensitive spots on the body astonishingly corresponded to the fatal wounds of that very pilot. These discoveries were far from random. When Ian Stevenson and his team analyzed 210 reliable cases, they found that more than 1/3 of the children bore birthmarks or bodily marks that matched the cause of death in the previous life. This makes birthmarks a particularly clear entry point for study. They seem to remind us that the soul is not merely an abstraction, but something capable of leaving visible marks upon the body. Perhaps it is precisely these marks that form a hidden bridge between the life that was and the life that is. When confronted with these striking cases, scholars must ask a critical question. Is there any scientific possibility of a link between birthmarks and past life memories? In medical terms, birthmarks are often explained as vascular or pigment irregularities. Yet in Ian Stevenson's research, over 200 cases showed birthmarks whose shapes and locations closely matched fatal wounds from a previous life. Circular marks resembling bullet holes, linear streaks like knife cuts, and in some children, 2 marks aligned like the entry and exit wounds of a bullet. Psychologists might suggest parental suggestion, but the difficulty is this. In many cases, the children spoke first about their past life memories, and only afterward did parents notice the unusual birthmarks. In other words, this was not a self-fulfilling family narrative. There are also cases where, even when parents tried to ignore or deny, the children repeatedly insisted, sometimes with anger, "This is the mark of how I died," Such intense emotional conviction is difficult to explain as mere environmental suggestion. From a biological perspective, another possibility has been proposed. Some scholars speculate if consciousness retains a certain energetic pattern at the moment of death, this pattern might influence the next incarnation, shaping genetic or embryonic development, and leaving visible marks upon the body. This is not to say that science has reached a definitive answer, but as many researchers emphasize, when the number of cases reaches the hundreds across diverse cultures and regions, and when the correlations between birthmarks and fatal wounds remain strikingly consistent, we must at least acknowledge that this is a phenomenon worthy of serious consideration. Perhaps these marks upon the body are fragments of evidence left by nature, waiting for us to assemble and understand. Across the world, reports of past life memories have emerged. Yet in the Middle East, particularly in Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon, such cases stand out with remarkable clarity. Here, cultural acceptance of reincarnation makes people more willing to listen, and when these memories come with physical marks on the body, they become far harder to dismiss. In Turkey, a famous case tells of a boy born with a deep scar-like mark on the back of his head, strangely resembling a gunshot wound. From an early age, he told his parents, "I was killed by a bullet." As he grew older, he revealed his previous name and even described the location of a village. When researchers brought him there, locals recognized the name. Indeed, years earlier, a man had been shot dead at the very spot the boy described. The wound matched the boy's birthmark exactly. In Syria, another child was born with a red mark on his right shoulder. He insisted, "I was stabbed to death in my previous life." Following his directions, villagers uncovered the case of a missing man who had died from a knife wound in the shoulder. The boy also identified the man's relatives by name. Here again, verbal memories and physical birthmarks reinforced each other in striking ways. In the Lebanese mountains, researchers documented a girl with a long mark across her left hand. From childhood, she claimed, "This is where I was cut with a knife in my past life." Villagers confirmed that such a person had indeed lived and died in their community, and the wound location matched her birthmark with uncanny accuracy. Such stories lead us to wonder, if birthmarks truly record past wounds, then perhaps the body itself becomes the archive of the soul. When discussing the connection between birthmarks and fatal wounds, the scientific community naturally does not accept it uncritically. Medicine, psychology, and skeptics have raised many objections and counterarguments. The mainstream medical explanation holds that birthmarks primarily arise from genetic mutations, pigment irregularities, or vascular malformations, all of which can occur naturally during embryonic development. Thus, they argue, there is no need to invoke the supernatural concept of reincarnation. From the perspective of psychology, skeptics argue that many so-called past life memories could be products of children's imagination or suggestion. Young children are highly impressionable, easily influenced by parents, media, or religious culture. Such influences, they say, may later be mistaken for authentic memories. Another frequent criticism is confirmation bias. Researchers may be more likely to record cases that support reincarnation claims, while ignoring the vast majority of children with ordinary, unexplained birthmarks. This, critics argue, creates a statistical distortion. In the context of academic debate, skeptical voices do play an important role. They remind us to remain cautious and to avoid hastily interpreting every anomaly as evidence for reincarnation. And yet, as some researchers stress, while these criticisms are valid, they cannot fully erase the weight of certain highly specific cases, especially when children accurately name previous identities or villages, and when their birthmarks correspond precisely to fatal injuries. The explanations offered by medicine and psychology still fall short of satisfying every question. Thus, the scientific approach may not lie in outright denial, but rather in acknowledging that our current knowledge may simply not be sufficient to explain all phenomena. As we come to the end of this episode, we look back on a journey that has taken us from Turkish villages to the deserts of the Middle East, from India and Sri Lanka to Western research centers. And again, we have encountered the same theme: mysterious marks on the body that seem to whisper the unfinished stories of past lives. These birthmarks and death scars may not be proof in themselves, but they are clues, hints pointing toward a larger mystery. They are like footnotes left by life itself, reminding us that death is not an ending, but a new beginning. Buddhism teaches that karma follows us like a shadow. Hinduism tells us the soul is reborn again and again. Western philosophers and scientists continue to ask, how does consciousness meet matter? Different traditions, different words, yet all suggest that life is far more expansive than we imagine. Perhaps we cannot solve these mysteries immediately. Just as we gaze at the stars and sense the vastness of the universe without ever touching its edge. And yet, in this very unknowing, human thought and faith continue to grow. If the soul does leave its mark, then we must look at our actions with greater care. For what we do may not vanish at death, but may echo forward into the future. As Albert Einstein said, "What we know is like a small lamp shining in the night. Compared to the vast darkness of what we do not know, it is almost nothing." Life may be that vast darkness, and birthmarks, those subtle, mysterious scars, may be the small lights guiding us through, reminders that death is not the end, but another form of continuation.